Look at the continent of Africa. It is a land of unparalleled natural wealth, a treasure trove of gold, diamonds, oil, and rare minerals. Beneath its soil lies a staggering percentage of the world's most coveted resources, essential for our modern lives. Yet, this immense abundance stands in stark, heartbreaking contrast to widespread poverty. Africa is home to the majority of the world's extreme poor, a cruel irony that defies logic and justice. How can a continent so rich be home to so much suffering? This is not merely a paradox, it is a systemic injustice. We frame Africa's economic woes not as an unfortunate circumstance, but as a deliberate, ongoing, world's greatest robbery. It is a continuous extraction, a relentless drain on its potential. This phenomenon is often called the resource curse. It links resource abundance directly to corruption, conflict, and crippling dependency. Instead of prosperity, these riches have brought instability and exploitation, trapping nations in a cycle of underdevelopment. To understand this injustice, we must trace its origins back to a pivotal moment in history. The Berlin Conference of 1884-85 stands as a monument to imperial arrogance, a meeting that forever altered Africa's destiny. European powers, without a single African representative present, carved up the continent among themselves. They drew arbitrary lines on maps, disregarding existing cultures, languages, and communities, imposing their will with absolute impunity. The colonial model was brutally simple and ruthlessly effective. Its sole priority was resource extraction and the export of raw materials. Africa was reduced to a mere quarry, its vast wealth siphoned off to fuel European industrialization and expansion. This system was enforced through unspeakable brutality. It established widespread forced labor, massive land grabs, and the systematic suppression of indigenous cultures. Human dignity was crushed under the weight of colonial ambition. Consider the Belgian Congo, a chilling example of this exploitation. King Leopold II's regime unleashed unimaginable horrors, driven by the insatiable demand for rubber. Millions perished in a genocide fueled by greed, their lives sacrificed for profit. In Kenya, the British colonialists seized vast tracts of fertile land, displacing indigenous communities. This act of dispossession stripped people of their livelihoods and heritage, creating deep-seated grievances that persist to this day. The physical chains of colonialism may have been broken, but its legacy persists through a more insidious form, neocolonialism. After independence, the political flags changed, but the fundamental economic structures remained largely intact. Multinational corporations, often headquartered in former colonial powers, continue to perpetuate dependency. They dictate terms through skewed trade agreements, ensuring that Africa remains a supplier of cheap raw materials, not a competitor. The International Monetary Fund and World Bank, powerful global institutions, have imposed crippling debt traps. Their loans come with harsh conditionalities, forcing privatization and austerity measures that often undermine public services and national sovereignty. Western military presence, often justified as counterterrorism or peacekeeping, frequently serves another purpose. It secures access to vital resources and protects corporate interests, maintaining a strategic foothold in resource-rich regions. The landscape of exploitation is also evolving. New global players, including China, Russia, and the UAE, are now engaging in resource-driven strategies across Africa. While their approaches may differ, the underlying pattern of extraction often remains. This new scramble for Africa's resources continues to prioritize foreign interests over local development. It highlights that the problem is not just historical, but a dynamic, ongoing challenge involving multiple global actors. The core argument we must confront is this: who truly benefits from Africa's immense resources? The answer is stark and undeniable. It is not the African people, but a powerful network of foreign entities and global elites. Let's break down the resource-to-profit chain, a mechanism designed for maximum extraction and minimal return. It reveals a system rigged against the very nations that possess the wealth. African nations extract the raw materials from their own soil, often at great environmental and social cost. They bear the burden of mining, drilling, and logging, providing the foundational elements for global industries. But foreign companies own the rights to these resources. They ship them overseas, often with minimal processing, to be refined and manufactured elsewhere. Then, these finished goods are sold back to African markets at inflated prices. Consider cobalt, a critical component for electric vehicle batteries. Over 80% of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yet, the vast majority of Congolese people live in abject poverty, their lives untouched by this global demand. African gold, mined in abundance, is exported to Europe and the UAE, becoming jewelry or financial assets. African governments receive minimal tax revenue, while the true value is added and captured far from its origin. Ultimately, global stock markets and foreign shareholders are the primary beneficiaries. They reap billions in profits, their portfolios swelling from the exploitation of African resources, while the continent struggles to develop. This system perpetuates a cycle of underdevelopment, where Africa's wealth enriches others. It is a clear demonstration of how global economic structures are designed to maintain existing power imbalances. Why does this system persist, despite its obvious injustice? Several powerful enabling factors contribute to its enduring nature. It is a complex web of global power dynamics and internal vulnerabilities. The global political system inherently favors nations with economic and military power. These dominant nations dictate the rules of international trade and finance, ensuring their interests are prioritized. Western nations, with their historical influence, continue to exert significant control over global institutions. The United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and the G20 often reflect the agendas of the most powerful, not the most vulnerable. Tragically, the complicity of some African leaders also plays a role. Corruption, weak governance, and a lack of accountability allow foreign entities to exploit resources with ease, often at the expense of their own people. Furthermore, media narratives often perpetuate a damaging stereotype. Africa is frequently portrayed as a charity case, a continent in perpetual need of aid, rather than a looted continent whose wealth is systematically siphoned away. This narrative obscures the true nature of the problem, shifting focus from systemic exploitation to perceived internal failings. It disempowers and misinforms, making it harder to advocate for genuine change. Despite the immense challenges, there is a growing determination to break the cycle of injustice. Initiatives by the African Union are pushing for greater resource sovereignty, demanding that Africa controls its own destiny. There is a powerful push for value-added industries within Africa itself. Instead of exporting raw materials, the goal is to refine, process, and manufacture goods on the continent, creating jobs and retaining wealth. This means building refineries, factories, and processing plants, transforming raw resources into finished products. It is about capturing the full value chain, ensuring that the profits stay within African economies. Youth-led movements across the continent are rising, demanding economic reform and an end to exploitation. They are a powerful voice for change, advocating for transparency, accountability, and a more equitable future. This is a call to action for all of us. For activists, students, economists, global citizens, and policymakers alike. We must demand justice, challenge the status quo, and support Africa's right to control its own resources and build its own prosperity. Watch more episodes. South Africa EP1, South Africa, Diamonds, Gold and Apartheid. Episode 2, Belgium and the Congo, Rubber, Blood and Genocide. Episode 3, France in West Africa, Gold, Francs and Control. Episode 4, Britain in Kenya, Mau Mau, Tea and Bloodshed. Episode 5, Germany in Namibia, Genocide before the Holocaust. Episode 6, Portugal in Angola, Chains, Diamonds and Oil. Episode 7, Italy in Libya, Mussolini's Desert Empire. Episode 8, USA in Liberia, Freedom or Control. Episode 9, Spain in Equatorial Guinea, Oil, Obsession and Oppression. Episode 10, Netherlands in South Africa, Gold, God and Guns. Episode 11, China in Africa, Aid or Empire. Episode 12, Russia in Africa, Arms, Influence and Mercenaries. Episode 13, Turkey in Africa, Humanitarian Aid or Strategic Influence. Episode 14, UAE in Africa, Ports, Power and Petroleum. The time for passive observation is over. We must recognize the world's greatest robbery for what it is and actively work towards dismantling it. The future of Africa, and indeed global justice, depends on our collective will to act. African Union initiatives for resource sovereignty. Push for value-added industries inside Africa, refining, manufacturing. Youth-led movements demanding economic reform. Need for transparency, fair trade, and international accountability. End with a rallying question. If Africa controlled its own wealth, how different would our world look today? If you believe Africa deserves to control its own future, share this video. Watch the entire Colonialism in Africa series to understand the full story, and join the conversation in the comments below. Thank you for your support. It's free to subscribe and join us to lift the fallen, inspire others, voice against injustice, celebrate equality and peace. Fight against genocide and colonialist occupation forces. Peace on earth. See you in the next adventure.